Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. We have a very special Christmas episode, assuming I don't release it early, today to cap off our month of Christmas episodes. We're talking about The Muppet Christmas Carol, one of my all-time favorite Christmas movies. And joining me today, we have Frank Bazzani. How you doing, Frank?
Doing good. How are you doing tonight?
Doing good. And we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
What is going on? Before we dive into the show proper, a little bit of housekeeping. This show is made possible entirely by the support of our patrons over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. So if you like the show and you can support us over there, we would definitely appreciate it. But if you can't, no big deal. The fact that you're listening is awesome. And of course, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. So yeah, The Muppet Christmas Carol. Diving into so when I kind of locked in the like let's do these four holiday movies for our first Christmas as that D Plus show, because this is, I believe this is episode 52, wrapping up
Oh,
our
nice.
very first year, because our very first episode of that D Plus show, I believe, was like January 1st or something like that.
It
The
was.
first week of January this last year. So yeah, this wraps up kind of our first full year of that D Plus show. And so yeah, when I said, okay, I want to do Home Alone, I want to do the Santa Claus, Nightmare Before Christmas, the Muppet Christmas Carol was always like that's gonna be the like on Christmas Day episode, because of the offerings on Disney Plus. It's probably my favorite of the Christmas movies. Of Christmas movies in general, it falls like just behind Die Hard, and depending on my mood, It's a Wonderful Life, I guess. So yeah, I this was a movie
Never.
very near and dear to me growing up. Frank, you were saying this was the first time you'd ever watched it?
Yeah. I had never seen this one before, and I had also realized when I was sort of thinking back on it, I've never seen any of the Muppets movies, like even the recent ones. It just like the Muppets wasn't necessarily a thing for me growing up. Like it was totally around and it was
Mm-hmm.
on. I just never really watched it. So especially with these movies, I had never seen them.
Okay.
So this was kind of like my first foray into just besides just hearing about it.
Wow. Okay. Very cool. And then Cam, you'd watched it, but not in many, many years.
Yeah, like 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's. So diving into the history lesson, and it's probably the first time I'd watched it in a number of years myself as well. But a little bit of the history lesson. Originally released December 11th, 1992. Other releases at the time, Home Alone 2: Lost in New York came out November 19th, and basically, like as the follow up to the surprise smash Home Alone, kind of ate this movie's lunch. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in, I think, some of the trivia stuff. Aladdin also came out like right before this, November 25th. The Bodyguard came out November 25th as well. And
Oh yeah.
then a couple of movies that like Toys came out December 18th, so the week after this one. And
Ooh,
Toys was a movie growing up that, like, I guess probably in part because my dad loved Robin Williams, like that it was such a staple of holiday movie for me was Toys, which is a very weird movie if you've ever seen it. It is like a toy company, but becomes like militaristic a little bit, and like there's basically an epic battle as kind of the final of that movie, finale of that movie. But like yeah, Robin Williams, Joan Cusack, I remember just being like emblazoned in my brain. And then Chaplin, with a very young Robert Downey Jr. Playing the
Mhm.
titular role of Charlie Chaplin, also came out December 18th. And that's not a movie I didn't see that movie for the first time until probably like the mid to late 2000s. Just for whatever reason, I had missed it growing up. So, but really enjoyed it
I mean,
eventually
it was Oscar bait.
when I eventually saw it, because I probably saw it like while I was in college doing like physical comedy stuff in theater. So and he's phenomenal at that aspect of it. His accent, I think has been much maligned and as a little hit or miss, but the physical comedy in that was great.
I-
So yeah, yeah,
If
Frank.
if you had to compare his work in that to Doolittle,
Oh
which one
God,
do you think would he perform better in?
like easily Chaplin. Doolittle, easily the worst movie I saw this year. Um, it's so terrible, so terrible. Like, and he's like clearly having some fun with it, and he's acting his ass off and doing a weird Welsh accent for the thing. But yeah, that is a bad movie.
That was not Welsh. That was just a
No,
bad
I mean, no,
accent
he
for a
was
bad movie.
for Doolittle. He's doing. I mean, it was a better Welsh accent than anybody I know could do a Welsh accent. So, yeah, it was close enough. But anyway, back to the Muppet Christmas Carol.
Mm.
Runtime of an hour and 25 minutes. I think an hour and 27 or 28 minutes if you include the deleted scene slash song of that we'll talk about in a little bit. In the Disney live action timeline of things, this came out about a month after the Mighty Ducks, or a couple months after the Mighty Ducks, which had come out October 2nd. And then it was followed up by Homeward Bound: The Incredible Journey on February 3rd, 1993. Again, like this was just peak, like Trevor's childhood kinds of movies. Mighty
There's a lot of
Ducks.
great movies.
Yeah, Mighty Ducks I watched over and over and over again. And even Homeward Bound, like especially because like it had Michael J. Fox as one of the voices of the pets, was a ton of fun. In the Muppets live action timeline, I pulled this in as a secondary. This has the unenviable task of being like the first Muppet movie following
Mm.
the passing of Jim Henson in 1990. So this had come after a long break following The Muppets Take Manhattan, which had come out July 13th, 1984. And then it would be followed up with another staple of my childhood, Muppet Treasure Island, in February 16th, 1996, a few years later. The director
The
of the
most
film,
superior Muppets film.
I it is second only to this one for me. Like I love, but I can admittedly watch Muppet Treasure Island any time of year, whereas like this one, is best around Christmas time. But yes, like Muppet Treasure Island, it's a definitely one we'll do on this show at some point in time. In particular, I remember just growing up and like saying and chanting boom shakalaka boom shakalaka boom shakalaka laka boom shakalaka laka. Yeah, ton of fun with that. Director here, Brian Henson, of course, son of Jim Henson. This was his feature film debut, and then he would go on to also direct Muppets Treasure Island, as well as recently The Happy Time Murders, which I don't know if you guys saw this movie or even saw like wind of it or whatever, but this was I want to say 2018. Melissa McCarthy doing a very like adult R-rated kind
Oh
of
yeah.
puppet movie, where she's like she's a hard cop with a puppet partner, I think, and she's trying to get to the bottom of Muppet like crimes. So very much kind of treading on that like Avenue Q kind of like let's do stuff with puppets but let's make it really adult and edgy kind of thing. I think it ended up kind of like missing the mark a little bit, but I thought it was interesting to see that.
It tanked super hard.
Oh yeah, super hard. It tanked. I mean, I didn't think it was going to find an audience, but in terms of just like even critical, it was.
This is a family-friendly show, but there's a scene in the trailer that is just abhorrent.
So. But yeah, so I thought I was very impressed or surprised, I guess, by the fact that Brian Henson had directed that, kind of taking the Henson lineage over to there. Writers, of course, based on the novel by Charles Dickens, and the screenplay was written by Jerry Joel, who had done many, many Muppets things up to this point, including The Muppet Movie, The Great Muppet Caper. He had also written many, many episodes of like The Muppet Show and Fraggle Rock and Sesame Street and all that stuff. And then he would go on to also write Muppet Treasure Island, Muppets, and the movie Muppets from Space, that is one of the Muppets movies I've never seen. Like
I have seen it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, I mean that's like I remember that being kind of like the even for like what 12-year-old Trevor or whatever it was at the time, like hearing not great things about Muppets in Space. But really like this era of Muppet Christmas Carol and Muppet Treasure Island is my era of Muppets. To kind of your point, Frank, like I've seen the three movies that came before that, the was the Muppet Movie, The Great Muppet Caper, and Muppets Take Manhattan. I've seen all of those a few times, but like none of them are burned in my brain as much as this movie and as much as Muppet Treasure Island are. But yeah, like I mean the Muppets, and I will say the one of the extra credit things, of course, was the reboot of the Muppets that came out a few years ago, maybe 2012, I think. That was written
It was like
by
2010, 2011.
yeah, something like that. Written by Jason Segel, who clearly like
Mm.
loved and was a fan of the Muppets growing up. And I remember like I always point to that movie as one of those like we're living in a golden era of media because the people that loved these things growing up are getting to make these things now. And you see
Yeah.
that like that has continued on with stuff like Rogue One and Gary Whitta getting to like the people that are getting to make Star Wars now are the people that grew up loving Star Wars, and so they get to kind of like carry that forward. And the Muppets was really one of the first examples I saw of like that kind of like fan fiction, but
Huh.
on a big budget scale, on a on a like formal studio
Yeah.
produced kind of scale. I'm sure it had happened like
I
prior
know
to
you're
that,
right.
but like it was certainly one of the first real like concrete examples of like that's really cool that this other talented individual in Jason Segel, who was riding high on How I Met Your Mother and stuff like that, got to like do his dream project of making a Muppet movie.
I heard it was pretty good.
Yeah, it's I
Oh,
mean
it's excellent.
it
It's
definitely
incredible.
captures like the classic Muppet humor and pathos and all that stuff. I have not seen the follow up Muppets Most Wanted, and he admittedly like he walked away from it, I think, so I don't think he's even in it. Like
Nope.
he did his Muppet movie and like he was good. And yeah, like Muppets Most Wanted, I think, kind of has a similar vibe for me of like Muppets in Space, of like it has its cameos and stuff like that because many Muppets do, but yeah, it just didn't really
It went it
rock
went
the
from
boat.
being a no, went from being a like you have Jason Segel, Amy Adams, like a lot of like really high profile actors mixed with classic actors and old television actors
Chris
in the
Cooper in
first one
there
that
being just a
Chris
great
Cooper,
villain.
yeah.
Maniacal laugh, maniacal laugh,
Laugh,
maniacal
maniacal
laugh.
laugh, maniacal laugh. Yeah, just like phenomenal like talent. The follow up had like so many like quote unquote modern popular television stars that it felt really weak.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Um, I did not care for it very much. Like anything with the Muppets is going to be at a level of it has the Muppets, which makes it like above par, but it just like the Muppets captured a type of magic with Muppets that hasn't like because that kickstarted a whole Muppets revival that never really found its footing.
Yeah, I remember
And
the short
and it
lived like Muppets TV show that was kind of like the Muppets
yeah,
meets The Office.
yeah, it never really found its footing and oh, we lost Frank.
Yep,
Um
as
like
we
it
do.
never found its footing and it's sad because you know and it shows because they were trying to do quote unquote modern things with the Muppets. But what makes the Muppets film great, the revival film great, is because it's not trying to be modern. It's trying to just be the Muppets now.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not about oh we're gonna do a lot of like don't do the Muppets aren't meant to do quote unquote new things. Muppets are the Muppets. You know what you want with the Muppets. Give us the Muppets.
Yeah, weirdly, I think like
I don't want to see.
some of the best
Yeah.
like bits of the Muppets we've gotten in recent years are when they do like viral YouTube video stuff, or even
Hmm.
like the Game Awards stuff that we've seen the last couple of
Yeah.
years, like the Swedish Chef bit at this last year's, and then
Mm.
the year before
It's
that
my dude.
the Beaker like untitled Beaker game basically was like
Hmm.
a pitch perfect kind of Muppets bit. That was a ton of fun. So yeah, I think
And
especially like
there's.
for people that don't quite know how to handle the Muppets, they work best in smaller doses like that.
Mm.
Mhm. I will say that the Muppets are so ingrained in pop culture as kind of like under the surface that when they show up, you're like, oh, it's the Muppets.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they go away again, it's like under the surface again, and they just ride it. And when they can ride that, but do their thing, and then go back down, it's good. But if you throw too much Muppets at people, it becomes grating. And the show that they did was less about, oh, we're gonna do like a variety show and it'll be fun. And they're like, but we're gonna throw in backstage drama and all this. And it's like, no, we don't. None of us want that. We just want the Muppets.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like if it had just been the like, hey, we're gonna do like a late night show, but it's the Muppets, it would have been very much in the vein of the original Muppet Show, which
Mhm.
was a ton of fun. It's a variety show. It's sketch comedy, bringing in guest of the week to do bits and stuff like that. Have a great time with that.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
Mark Hamill's one of the best hosts they ever had on that show. It's great,
yeah.
and they like the Muppets are. You can tell from actors that the puppeteers behind the Muppets are so much fun to work with, and they're so professional and they're so much fun to work with that it's easy to just start like just going off with them
Hmm.
on these fun things. And when they are able to do that, it's fun and engaging and delightful. But when you try to make the Muppets something they're not, it will always fail. And that's what Muppets in Space was. That's what Muppets Most Wanted was. Um, and yeah, so
Yeah, I think a great Twitter account to follow is at History Muppet. And it's basically like just a fan. He's actually, I believe, a Kind of Funny best friend. Like
Mm.
I met him through the Kind of Funny like Facebook group years ago. Joshua Gillespie, I believe, is the gentleman's name.
yeah,
And he's just he's a diehard Muppet fan, and he created this Twitter account to like showcase clips and like behind the scenes things of the Muppets, and it has blown up, and yeah, like I wish him all the success in the world with it, because he's just done a great job of kind of documenting all that stuff, and just being a Muppets fan. So like I've seen so many great like Jim Henson interviews or something where he'll be interviewing, and then he'll have Kermit there with him, and he'll just switch between being Jim and being Kermit, and just do it seamlessly or flawlessly, or even as he's I mean, I saw just one the other day, where it's like he is talking as Jim, but like Kermit is reacting to him, and just kind of like participating, being an active listener in the conversation, and it was just that's something that the Henson kind of company has done just great work with over the years. So, yeah, starring the who's who of this film. Of course, we have Michael Caine, as Ebenezer Scrooge, who prior to this point had done films like Alfie. He had done The Italian Job, Hannah and Her Sisters, is where he, I believe, won his first Academy Award. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels was a few years before this that he did with Steve Martin. Great comedic
Yep.
film there that I actually first saw as like the stage play adaptation of it, before going back and watching the movie. And then following this, he would go on to do projects like Miss Congeniality. He was Austin Powers' dad in Goldmember. And then, of course, he is a regular in the Christopher Nolan circuit of films, including the Dark Knight trilogy, most recently Tenet. I put in the notes here, he was 59 when this movie came out. Already like
Mm.
an established actor, not only from some of those film roles, but also from like the Royal Shakespeare Company and stuff like that. He was knighted in the year 2000, so he is Sir Michael Caine. And then he is 87 now. So shout out to Michael Caine for just continuing to kill the game. Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
I did think that was really funny because again, this is my first time watching it, and so I was like, on the one hand, I was like, man, Michael Caine's really young in this movie, and then on the other hand, I was like, Michael Caine's old in this movie. Like Michael Caine's been so he's so old, and I
Yeah,
was like, and I don't know, I guess I just never really clicked, like, because he's just been old my entire life. Like when
exactly. Yeah,
I think of him in like Batman with like the white hair, like Alfred. Like that's just how I picture Michael Caine. So it's just like it was funny to be like, oh, he's so much younger, but old at the same time.
yeah. He's still. I mean, Scrooge is still
it's
an old character.
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting because in the 70s and 80s or 60s, 70s and 80s, Michael Caine was like a sex symbol movie star
Like, yeah,
in
you go and
England.
look at Alfie. He's like he's hot.
He's hot. Like he is a like and so like he looks great even now at 87.
Yeah,
Yeah, he does look good,
Jeez,
honestly. He's holding
he
up
looks
like
great for
really well.
87.
Yeah,
yeah.
and
Yeah,
he's
no,
still like really cognizant too. Like he can still act and like kill it. Like
yeah, no, he's great. But he's always just been like a super brilliant person and like a really amazing actor. And he's just been able to like just to keep up, and he never falls into classic acting pitfalls that people do with their career. He's just always kind of done his own thing, and he's just dominated. I mean, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels is one of like the funniest and most incredible films I've ever seen in my entire life. It's brilliant from the like from bottom to top. Every layer, every level is just absolutely perfect. It's up there as like being a perfect film for me. It does so much, and then he is such an incredible actor. And despite that, I have to say, out of all the Ebenezer Scrooges, he's one of my least favorite.
Wow. Okay.
Really?
Yeah,
We'll
I
get into
got some
that.
hot
Yeah.
takes on this film. I got some hot takes.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that, honestly.
We'll get into that because yeah, this is like, I mean, like on that note, this is very much the Christmas Carol story to me. And he is very much like, and I say this as somebody like I got to in like middle school, I got to play Scrooge, which is like Scrooge is one of those like if I ever go back to acting, that's one of the dream roles I would love to just play
Yeah.
in theater again. But
Trevor,
like I got to
what
do
you're
it
saying
in
is an
in it
exact thing that
in
happened to me.
yeah
So,
in middle school. I was like it basically I was like the actor in the class or whatever. So they were like, all right, well let's give Trevor the the one that's actually got to do a lot of stuff. And yeah. But yeah, I look forward to discussing you know, other Scrooges and stuff like that. So I didn't pull it in for this, but one of the things I love about the IMDb of the Muppet Christmas Carol is, and the opening credits do this too, is the Muppets themselves are credited. So it's like it's Michael Caine, Scrooge, the Great Gonzo as Charles Dickens, Kermit the Frog as Bob Cratchit, and you can like click on each of their respective IMDb pages. For the sake of this, I just brought in their performers. So you have Dave Geltz playing Gonzo there as Charles Dickens, as well as other roles. He's been playing the role of Gonzo since 1970. And I believe I don't think I pulled it in here, but like I believe the trivia was Dave Geltz and Steve Whitmire. Steve Whitmire playing Kermit here are the two Muppets performers that have been in all 8 of the theatrically released Muppets films. But yeah, Steve Whitmire there taking over the role of Kermit as Bob Cratchit here. Again, Kermit obviously prior to this had always been performed by Jim Henson. Steve Whitmire also reprises his role as like Rizzo the Rat as well as others. And yeah, he took over the role of Kermit following Jim Henson's passing in 1990. Frank Oz, of course, here playing Miss Piggy as Emily Cratchit, as well as Fozzie Bear as Fozziewig, as well as other roles. And he has been, you know, Miss Piggy, Fozzie Bear, Grover, Cookie Monster, Bert, and of course Yoda. And he's also in live action in Knives Out. If you caught that movie last year. And just
Who is he in Knives Out?
He's the like the lawyer for that the family goes and sees late in the movie.
Oh yeah,
it's just
okay,
like
yeah.
It's like, hey, there's Frank Oz just in live action. Cool.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like that was like the weirdest cameo to have. I'm like, is that Frank Oz?
Yep. Hot.
Like, I don't know what he looks like off the top of my head.
Yeah. You have Jerry Nelson playing Tiny Tim, as well as the Ghost of Christmas Present and other roles. Probably best known as Count Von Count, as well as the original performer for Mr. Snuffleupagus on Sesame Street. And then we get into some of the other human roles. We have Raymond Coulthard, whatever, is like teen Scrooge, I guess I'll say. This was his film debut. And immediately he strikes me as like, oh my God, he has Michael Caine's eyes or eyebrows. That's like the first thing I thought of when I saw him this time around. He also would go on to be in the film The English Patient, and he's been doing steady work in British television ever since. Meredith Braun.
He is, he does actually really good work in British television.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's been in some really good stuff.
I looked to see if any of these people had been in Doctor Who, and none of them had, and I was sad and disappointed by that.
I'm sorry, the one British television touchstone that you have, Trevor, was not fulfilled by this film.
I also would have accepted Luther or Coupling, just the other ones I know about.
The IT crowd.
The IT crowd, yeah. I mean, one of them is in the In-Betweeners, so I pulled that in here because that's a name I recognized.
Yeah.
I would never classify the In-Betweeners as like quote unquote great British television,
no.
but it's a fine show.
It has broken through to my ears in the pop culture space. So, but yeah, Meredith Braun here as Belle. She hasn't done too much of note, but I just want to give her some credit because she has one of my favorite songs in the film, which is often not actually in the film, in the deleted scene / song "When Love Is Gone," which we will talk about in a little bit. You have Steve McIntosh there as Fred, who prior to this had been in the film Memphis Belle, which I remember watching as like one of those, the teacher doesn't want to teach class this week, so we're going to watch a movie in American history. We watched Memphis Belle. I remember that Steve McIntosh being in that alongside Harry Connick Jr. And a number of other people. He also would go on to be in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Underworld: Rise of the Lycans, and most recently he was in the film Rocket Man, the Elton John kind of like biopic-esque kind of thing. And then lastly, we have Robin Weaver as his counterpart, Clara, who, as I said, the In-Betweeners, as well as she was in the White Christmas episode of Black Mirror, which I pulled in specifically because Frank was going to be on the show. And I will never forget Frank.
It's a great episode. It's a great show.
Frank detailing beat by beat the White Christmas episode of Black Mirror at RTX 2016, I think is when it was.
Like, it was way more relevant at the moment.
Oh, yeah. It, at that point, it was 6 months out of date or something like that. But you told it in such detail that when I eventually went and watched that episode, I was like, I don't think Frank missed a single thing. I know this entire episode because of Frank's recounting of it. So
Frank, that's a really long episode. That's a really long, heavily detailed episode.
Yeah.
There's a lot that happens. That's why I had to cover it in so much detail, because they go back to things that happened earlier in the episode.
Yeah, and I wasn't even in the room when he was describing this to like Zeiger and Joe Ruffler. Like, I was in the next room trying to like take a nap or something, but like Frank was just detailing this.
Hour-long.
I was so engrossed by the story that Frank was telling that I just kind of like listened from the other room, and so that is what I think about.
I'm glad you liked it at least.
So yeah, she was in that episode of Black Mirror. Yeah.
But Frank, that's like an hour-plus long episode.
Honestly, I only probably saved a little bit of time. We probably could have just watched the entire episode.
If we ever do like the kind of funny style of in review like shows, Frank is absolutely on the Greg Miller let's recap the plot duty, because he has a weird, disgusting memory for that kind of stuff.
I really do, though.
Here's the thing. I was actually thinking of White Christmas last night. Just because it feel like at least a couple of times a year I think about like that episode, just like the sad part, like the really tragic part of that episode. And like that always hits. Like that entire episode is just, guy who you think is supposed to be like the scumbag is not, like, he is bad, like he is a terrible person, but he is not the level of bad as the guy who quote unquote catches him.
Yeah. And they like the punishment doesn't necessarily fit the crime is kind of my takeaway from that episode. But we're not here to talk about that Christmas episode. So diving into some of the trivia here. Before production began, I think somebody kind of alluded to this earlier, Sir Michael Caine told producer and director Brian Henson, "I'm going to play this movie like I'm working with the Royal Shakespeare Company. I will never wink. I will never do anything Muppety. I am going to play Scrooge as if it is an utterly dramatic role, and there are no puppets around me." Henson replied, "Yes, bang on." And then I tied these two little bits of trivia together. But the other half of this is, halfway through production, Michael Caine realized this movie was Brian Henson's directorial debut. Caine was deeply impressed. Yeah, and that, I love how straight-laced he's playing it, and I don't think the movie works otherwise. The counterpoint to this is Tim Curry's role in Muppet Treasure Island, playing Long John Silver, where he is just, having a grand old time working with the Muppets. But I think that for the role that Scrooge is, he can't like do it with a wink and a nod, as he kind of said there, because Scrooge has to still be Scrooge.
Scrooge is Scrooge. Long John Silver's supposed to be fun. You're supposed to like Long John Silver when you meet him. Yeah.
And you do.
That's the difference.
Yeah. The song "When Love Is Gone," sung by Belle, was dropped from the theatrical release, parentheses, over the objections of producer and director Brian Henson, at the request of Disney chairman Jeffrey Katzenberg. who considered it too sad for young children. The last minute decision
Mm.
resulted in a jarring edit in the scene from which it was removed and caused some
Yeah.
confusion about Scrooge, Gonzo, and Rizzo's reactions. The scene was restored in the VHS, Laserdisc, and first DVD full screen releases, but it isn't used in television airings, Blu-ray releases, or the Netflix or Disney Plus versions. However, it is available as an extra option on Disney Plus, and in mid-December, so I don't know, like some like time in the last couple weeks, I guess, Brian Henson apparently announced that the original negatives for the removed scene have been found and would be reinstated back into the film.
That's awesome.
So this was
Oh, cool.
something. This is something that like I remembered growing up because I watched the VHS version so many times growing up that like it never dawned on me that it wasn't in the movie until again going back to that Muppet History account, like it made mention of it at some point of where he was basically like, his tradition in watching the movie is watch the movie up to where that scene is supposed to happen, then go find the YouTube video of that scene happening, and then go back and watch the rest of the movie. And when I watched it this time around, that was pretty much what I did, but I like backed out, watched the extra, and then continued on with the movie. And so, yeah, I asked you guys kind of if you hadn't already seen it to go and track down that little extra in there. What do you guys think of its omission from the movie?
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
It's not like it's not a long song. It's like maybe 2 minutes 40 seconds.
Yeah,
it's a short movie
And
anyways.
it's a short movie anyway. It doesn't break it over the 90-minute mark.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even with that song, yeah, it would still be under 90 minutes. Like,
And
Yeah, so
the issue wasn't timing, as we kind of touched on there. It was that they think it's too sad, and like it is a very heartbreaking little duet there. But I love that.
But it's
because
supposed
of
to
it.
be.
It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And without it, like the way it's shot
scene
in the
doesn't
movie,
work. The scene
like,
doesn't work.
It ends with this like sad. Okay, they've clearly broken up, but like the reaction you see from Scrooge and from Rizzo in particular, it's like you are way overreacting for what we just saw. But when you watch it with the song in context and Scrooge singing with Belle of the Past and stuff, that is one element. But then also the last song of the movie that the movie sends us off on is basically a reprise of a song that doesn't exist elsewhere in the movie. So like it loses the impact of that
set up as a reprise.
Yeah. It's like we're clearly going back to a song.
It's literally set up as a reprise of that song
that you didn't know if you didn't watch one of these other versions of it. So yeah, Frank. Since
it starts halfway through. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't think you had seen since you hadn't seen the movie. Like, before going back and watching that song, did it feel like a weird, jarring? Like, was it noticeable, or was it just kind of like, okay, it's more Muppet stuff?
I honestly did think it was kind of weird, and I obviously didn't know that. I didn't know that scene existed, and I had to go back and watch it later. But there was totally that moment, like when it cuts back to their reaction. I was like, that's a little bit weird. Like there was like, I honestly I really feel like I did pick up on that, but I didn't know there was like something missing there. But that actually it makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then even having that information after the fact, I am just like, no, they really should have just left that in. I'm like, why did you cut that out? Like, and I get why they're like, it's sad, but that's so funny to me, given that with like the juxtaposition of the Tiny Tim scene, where they were like, that's fine, that's not sad, but like this scene, that's too sad.
Yeah, some of the other trivia, I don't think I pulled it in here, but there is other trivia that talks to the idea that like people do look at this version of the Muppet of the Christmas Carol story as like one of the most depressing because of how sick it shows Tiny Tim. Like oftentimes Tiny Tim's sickness is alluded to, and you get that he's not gonna like last into the years of Christmas yet to come. But the fact that he is like so cough heavy in this, and we see him in such a weak state, is another aspect of like maybe that was like a 1-2 punch of like, well, we can't show Tiny Tim that sickly and have this heart-wrenching scene from Scrooge's past, but like ultimately that's also like taking it out of the Ghost of Christmas Past sequence means that like you miss out on that extra little bit of tragedy in Scrooge's past that led him to be the curmudgeon that he is, and really like and also it's set up that it's going to be a tragic thing because he clearly doesn't want to go to this other Christmas with Belle in the Fozziewig scene. But yeah, it was just kind of it's one of those like weird choices, and I really wished it had been like I was sad too when I logged in to watch the movie that I couldn't watch it like with the scene included. I had to step out and go watch it as a separate thing. But I'm hopeful that if this Brian Henson thing turns out to be true, that they'll give you like an option to watch it with that scene included or without, whichever your preference is. But I think I just think the movie works infinitely better with that scene included. So hopefully, thanks a lot, Jeffrey Katzenberg, for ruining that movie in the beginning. There was also
he ruined a lot of Disney stuff.
I didn't pull it in here, but there was a fun little trivia bit of test screenings of the movie. Talk about kids wondering what all the rats did to make Scrooge mad, because they were like, why is he giving them coal? They're good. Because they'd forgotten, or the creators forgot that like coal is a thing you give to naughty children at Christmas time. So they were like, why did Scrooge give them the coal? He was supposed to be nice then, and not realizing that, well, the coal is to keep them warm. But yeah, that was another fun little like test screening goof. According to,
I didn't even realize.
Yeah, you didn't catch that?
I didn't even realize, I didn't even realize, because I didn't, I noticed that he gives them that, but I didn't even think, because I was like, yeah, he's giving them coal, keep them warm. Like, back then, that's a pretty great gift, honestly.
Yeah.
And then let alone,
I
didn't think about
gift.
that.
Yeah.
Because,
That's
they really
play
play
expensive, because he complain. Yeah, how they play up how, like, curmudgeon he is, because he won't even let them light a single lick of coal, and they're like freezing.
Yep.
And he's like, how expensive it is, and goes off on that. And I'm like, oh, that's great.
That's and it has one of my fun little gags from the movie of like, imagine how cold it would be on the unemployment line, and it cuts immediately back to them like a Hawaiian in the sun, and then they're all like doing the hula stuff, and like I love the rats in this, and it even that like evokes what would become Muppet Treasure Island, of course, as well. According to producer and director Brian Henson, Gonzo and Rizzo narrate because he wanted to incorporate the narration and prose of the original novel. I think that's a great little touch of this version. This was the first major Muppet project after creator Jim Henson's death. The role of Kermit the Frog was handed down to Steve Whitmire, and Steve said he was incredibly nervous about taking over such an iconic character. The night before he recorded Kermit's songs for the movie, he had a dream where he met Henson in a hotel lobby and told him how unsure he was. In the dream, Henson reassured Whitmire that the feeling would pass. After waking up, Whitmire was confident and able to do the part. So that's a cool little, like, whatever his brain was telling him that he needed to see. Dedicated to the memory, of course, of Jim Henson, as well as Richard Hunt. Henson created the Muppets, and Hunt was best known as the voices of Scooter. Was best known as the voice of Scooter, and together Hunt and Henson performed the characters of Statler and Waldorf. Fitting little tribute to them. Hunt had passed away, I think, a year or two before this from AIDS, unfortunately. As I mentioned earlier, this movie did modestly well at the box office, but suffered due to competition from Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. So that was like the IMDb trivia piece. I went and did the extra little step of like looking up their domestic grosses. Muppets brought in $27.2 million domestic, compared to Home Alone 2 that brought in $173 million domestic. And then even that falls short of Home Alone 1 a year earlier, which had done $286 million domestic. And as I think we touched on in the Home Alone episode, was like shocking, blew it out of the water from any kind of expectations, and was for many, many years like one of the top, comedies. I think it was the top grossing comedy until I think we said Hangover 2, that I think was what Logan brought to the table.
I think that's right.
Yeah. And then the last little bit of trivia I have in here is, in the book, there's only one Marley, Jacob Marley. Robert Marley was added so they could be played by Statler and Waldorf. And this being like my version of A Christmas Carol growing up, I didn't realize for years that Marley was traditionally only one. Like
Mhm.
I just grew up thinking like Marley. And I like honestly I think that is one of the most inspired little tweaks and changes that they make was just in order to have Statler and Waldorf, who are some of my favorite Muppets,
Yeah.
play that role and that performance type. I thought that was a great choice. So yeah, how does it hold up, and what do we think of this? Cam, I want to throw it to you first because you were like, I don't like this. I don't like Michael Caine as Scrooge. So go ahead and Grinch it and Scrooge it for me. What don't you like about Michael Caine?
So I love Michael Caine. Even as his Scrooge, I think is, and it's really not his fault. The way the film is framed and done is meant to be joyful and light and playful, and that's the point of a Muppet Christmas Carol.
Mm-hmm.
The reason he's my least favorite is because the Muppets Christmas Carol is one of my least favorite Christmas Carol renditions. Um, there is a lot of from A Christmas Carol, particularly the Ghost of Christmas Past, and like they keep almost everything from Ghost of Future Yet to Come because there's really not a lot there to cut,
Yeah.
and it's fine the way it is. But the ghosts, like the entire point of A Christmas Carol is this is a man who was a boy who was treated harshly and grew up in a hard manner, who kept a lot of his boyishness until he became a man, and then once he became a man, he became a hard, cold, stern man, and up to the present where he is a almost black-hearted kind of fiend in his heart. He, but it's a great way of exploring the human transformation of Scrooge, and how Christmas has been like one of the most single impactful events occurring regularly in his lifetime. Um, Especially when it comes like, and it's there's a couple of things that I'll note here. One is the Ghost of Christmas. Like Michael Caine does a great job of delivering his lines impeccably, brutally, especially at the beginning of the film. And he is when everybody's like joyful, la la la, and he just cuts it short.
Mm-hmm.
He There's a few like the how would you like it at the unemployment line, like that is a bit more playful because it's about like he's yelling at rat puppets
Mhm.
or Muppets. He's yelling it at rat Muppets. Like it will come off more kitty, but he delivers a lot of the great lines, such as are there no prisons, no poorhouses,
Yeah.
no like he delivers those lines really well. The film around him doesn't evoke that emotion out of it because it's a Muppets movie. It's not supposed to do that. I love my favorite Christmas Carol is the 99 Patrick Stewart Christmas Carol,
Okay.
which is noted for being very true to the source material, but also very like the tone of the film is much darker, and um I think it builds a great contrast to the lighter moments of the film, the fact that like the harsher moments are so harsh. But the biggest gripe that I have about this film is it takes away a very core component for me in this film is uh, the relationship between Ebenezer and Fred.
Okay.
Fred is in A Christmas Carol. Fred is the only remaining remnant of Ebenezer's beloved sister,
Mm-hmm.
and he has watched Fred turn into a really wonderful young man. But instead of doing what his uncle tells him to, he's pursued his passions in life, his love, his care. Um, and and the dichotomy between the two is that Fred is a very interesting representation of who Ebenezer could have become.
Mm.
And those parallels are played up strongly. And you realize that a couple of things. One, in when it's a Ghost of Christmas Past, that is actually like a much longer scene in the film and play in the traditional material. In fact, past takes up almost like the majority chunk of time of the three ghosts
Hmm.
because it shows in the Christmas Carol, the Muppets Christmas Carol, they zoom over those years very quickly that he was in school.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
They're like, oh, he was always alone. It doesn't go into the fact that like his mother was dead and his father was terrible. Refused to let him come home. It wasn't a matter of, oh, he's not like, oh, he's like, he doesn't go home. It's a matter of his father doesn't want him home. And it's his sister, like his sister writes to him. His sister plays such a bigger part in the traditional material, and she's just totally absent.
Yeah.
And her life and death giving birth, um, like there's so much about like Fred being this lifeline for George, and they also do really great thing during the Christmas party during the of Christmas present. It cuts that scene with Fred short because it's supposed to end with Fred being like, okay, we've all had fun, but like my dear uncle's like, and being very honest and earnest about his love for his uncle, despite the fact that he's a curmudgeon like dick, is very much of like a feeling of compassion and love and brotherhood, also a family. And the Muppet Christmas Carol definitely angles it to put more of a focus on what I think a lot of films did, putting a focus on Tiny Tim. Tiny Tim is a massive part of Scrooge's change of character,
Hmm.
but there's so much because these other parts are cut short. The fact that the Cratchit scenes are not cut short do a lot to put more of an emphasis on those. Um, and so you're just missing really core pieces of A Christmas Carol that I really enjoy. They're some of my favorite parts. Um, because it looks and feels like uh, Scrooge never like really loved Christmas, or it was never really special to him. And when he's working for Fozziwig, like, oh, we're wasting money. When there's a wonderful line of Ghost of Christmas Present or the Ghost of Christmas Past uses a line that he says at the beginning, like the other ghosts, like in the traditional play, the ghosts all do, except Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. Uh, where she uses one of his lines against him, which is like, "What a waste of money," in reference to the coal being burned. He talks about how it wasn't about money, and it's a revival of like his love of in the traditional material Fezziwig film Fozziwig, and how what Fozziwig did to like for his employees was worth far more than what money could ever offer. And so you miss these really wonderful key lines to me, and we end up with a very fun, very festive, very very nice, very cookie cut version of A Christmas Carol. But what I like about it, and so even though it's one of my least favorite Christmas carols as a film, just as a film, I think it's great. I think it's
Hmm.
directed wonderfully. I love all the songs in it. The fact that it has songs I love, and like they're songs that are fun and Muppety, and it's wonderful when the Muppets are able to be Muppets in this film. It's contrasted beautifully with moments when they're being the characters from A Christmas Carol, and it ties in completely to the Muppets playing these characters from this book, and I love it. I love it dearly in my heart. But as a Christmas movie, it's great. As a Muppets movie, I love it. But as a Christmas Carol, I just feel like it's lacking a lot of, especially a lot of the important things about like the biting commentary that A Christmas Carol was written in and written for,
Hmm.
Yeah,
which was
that's
a condemnation of, yeah, just a real condemnation of the uh, wealth gap in Victorian society, and about this like the expense and scarcity of really essential needs for
Doesn't
people.
apply today at all.
Oh, I know, right?
Yeah. That's
And so like I would have like yeah.
I don't know if you guys watch or have seen the YouTube series Epic Rap Battles of History, but they did a great version of like A Christmas Carol a few years back, um, that was like their Ebenezer Scrooge gets visited by Marley, I think is Trump. The Ghost of Christmas Past is and this was pre-Trump winning the election. So 4 or 5 years ago now, I guess. Christmas Past is like J.P. Morgan. Christmas Present is Kanye West, and then Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come is still just a specter. But they do a great job of kind of like having each of those characters, like J.P. Morgan has like the line of like, I'm rocking the Monopoly mustache of rich dudes past or something like that. Just it's a great little like Christmas Carol
Really good.
condensed into 5 minutes or whatever. But yeah, I
Oh,
appreciate that, and
speaking of
clearly still obviously resonates to today.
yeah,
Mm.
but the Ghost of Christmas Present has like the very end of the Ghost of Christmas Present, in my opinion, is actually the scariest ending of any of the one scenes,
Yeah.
and it's because he instead of being like, oh, I'm old and I'm going to disappear, sparkles. It's I understand why they cut this part out because it's scary as all hell. And it's when he goes off on Scrooge because Scrooge is like, well, what about like and he just goes off and he says, well, aren't there jails? Aren't there poorhouses?
Well, yeah,
And just uses his like most biting lines, and then he reveals under his coat the entire time he's kept these two feral children.
right, yeah.
And it's like this commentary on like Dickens was such a brilliant writer, and he was so good, and A Christmas Carol I think is legendary as far as a property because he speaks on every level. A Christmas Carol literally hits on almost every literary level. It's one of the reasons it's a classic. And he it's such a strong thing, and the way that's done in film and stage is it's scary because these are like feral, angry children that are wild, and they're not his children. They're the children of men, children of man,
Yeah.
and they have been neglected. And it's so it's such a brilliant scene. I understand why they cut that one.
Yeah. Frank, let me throw it over to you for your impressions as this being your first time seeing them up at Christmas Carol. Were you had you seen other iterations of Christmas Carol before, or was this also one of your first of that as well?
I have seen some other iterations before, and I was definitely familiar. I've never read the actual book or the novel, but I've definitely am familiar with it. And overall, I think it was I do think it's a good movie. I think it's super well made, but for me it didn't hit super hard. It definitely, for me at least, was it is very much like A Christmas Carol but with Muppets, and I totally get that's the entire crust, and that's what makes it good, especially for the people who love Muppets and have that Muppets nostalgia. But for me it was totally just kind of jumping in and only just having my peripheral knowledge of the Muppets. It was just totally oh yeah, it's totally Dickens with the Muppets thrown in for some extra flavor. But they're I definitely like it. I think it's a well-made movie, but it didn't knock my socks off, I guess.
Yeah, this is again to kind of what we talked about earlier. This is it is a different version of the Muppets. Because like I said, the Muppets movies that had come before this, as well as many of the Muppet movies that would come after this, including probably most notably the remake there, or the reboot of the Muppets and kind of the Muppets Most Wanted. A lot of those are cameo heavy, and it's what are the big celebrities of the day? They're gonna pop in here and they're gonna have a scene with the Muppets, and it's Joan Rivers coming in or something like that. And then having those moments.
I love Joan Rivers.
And there isn't that in Muppet Christmas Carol, and there's not really even that in Muppet Treasure Island either. It is just kind of like we're gonna take these literary stories and just tell that story with Muppets characters. Even like a lot, like there are key Muppets characters that just aren't found in this, like Rolf and Scooter. Or I guess Rolf is there playing piano in Fozziwig, but like Scooter nowhere to be found in this. In part, probably because Richard Hunt had passed. But yeah, like that idea of and like this is also the first Muppet movie that didn't also feature characters from Sesame Street kind of crossing over, because that was kind of
Oh,
a
I didn't know that.
staple of the other Muppet movies, in that like Big Bird would appear or something like that. So yeah, it was definitely like a different era of Muppet movies, basically saying let's tell a classical literature story, but through the lens of the Muppets. And so it is like, I mean, it's also the first Muppet movie that doesn't star Kermit. Basically, like Kermit, obviously, of the Muppet, or of the non-human characters, gets the meaty role of Bob Cratchit, but like and there was even a trivia of like Miss Piggy doesn't show up until 53 minutes into the movie, which when
That's crazy.
you think of the Muppets, you think Kermit and Piggy. And yeah, the fact that their story is a subplot to the Scrooge story of this, as well as like the Ghost of Christmas Past and Christmas Present theoretically could have been other Muppets characters, in that like
Yeah.
the headmaster is played by Sam the Eagle, is kind of like a recognizable, and Marley becoming Marley and Marley with Statler and Waldorf. Like the fact that it features more Fraggle Rock's characters than it does like Sesame Street characters is a weird kind of thing for this movie. And so yeah, it's interesting that even if you'd had like that legacy and that history with the Muppets, you might have gone into this disappointed a little bit because they weren't the prominent role. This is a Michael Caine movie with Muppets. And for me, again, like as since this was probably my first real exposure to the Muppets outside of like I was probably growing up with like Muppet Babies, the animated show at this time, and all that stuff. Like it's a weird Muppets movie in the timeline of the Muppets, but like I think, again, just because of where it hit me growing up, it certainly kind of like resonates with me, obviously differently now growing up, or being an adult. But the fact that it was like my introduction to the Muppets, it was my introduction to the Christmas Carol story, leaves it like a special place in my nostalgic heart as a result of that. Because yeah, I grew up loving so many elements of this. Like watching it yesterday, I threw it on, and just like so many of the songs, I couldn't have sung probably any of the songs apart from like little bits of them going into it. But like as soon as I hear them, like everything starts flooding back, and it was like my own journey into the Ghost of Christmas Past, and just like remembering this movie and these songs and these characters, and just like little moments like the recurring gag of Gonzo and Rizzo being knocked off the windowsill, or even like I had forgotten how much I just loved the little bit of Kermit skating with the penguins, like skating across the scene, and like some of that is like like that from probably from a production stance is like, well, in past Muppet movies we like wowed everybody by having Kermit ride a bike. So what can we do in this that's gonna be a new thing that you've never seen a Muppet do? Let's have him jump in midair, kind of thing, and do that little that little moment. They're just like a lot of fun little beats like that probably resonate a little bit more with me because I grew up with this movie, and like going back to it, having that little scene where Tiny Tim and Kermit are, or Tiny Tim and Bob are, walking down the street and scatting, and doing kind of like they're like the little scat remix version of the song that Kermit had sung earlier. There's only one more day, one more sleep till Christmas, all that stuff. Like so much of this just was flooded back, and I love it, and and at the same time, like I find myself tearing up and welling up at Scrooge's lost love with Belle and seeing like him react to the coldness that has clearly led, which yes has a much darker kind of like lineage in the novel, but seeing it here, um, juxtaposed with the like just ebullient joy of Ghost of Christmas Present, like, and the like I love his whole sequence, um and how he grows to fill a room or shrinks down to fill a room with like the mice and stuff. Like I love that character, and then like you see how ephemeral that Ghost of Christmas Present character is and how he grows old, in that one day. um and yeah, we get the fun little like guessing game with Scrooge's family with Fred and Clara, um, and then you get and this is something that I meant to mention when you were talking about it, Cam. One of the other big changes of this movie, again, there's a ton of changes, but one of them is
Yeah, a lot.
the typically I believe you see the Cratchit household scene first, and then you go to the Fred scene, the family, and those get switched.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
again, they're switched here because of course you want to give more time and more power and more weight to the Muppet side of things with Kermit. But I still love that the family scene and the guessing game, and just the sadness on Scrooge's face when they realize that he's the unwanted, when he realizes that he's the unwanted thing, but also
And,
juxtaposed with like him guessing a cat, and then and then somebody else says a
yeah.
cat and he's like, I guessed it first. Like it's a wonderful roller coaster of emotions for Scrooge, and I find myself enjoying those as well. And this version of Tiny Tim is, I think, weirdly beautifully profound because it is coming out of the voice of a felt frog, but talking about like Kermit saying like, um, Tim wanted to be at the church because he wanted people to remember what they're thankful for on Christmas, and he wanted people to remember, he who healed the lame and blind and sick and all that stuff, and that like Tim's heart just being that full, is certainly in this version, I think in many versions, kind of the real turning point for Scrooge, and certainly we see kind of like, and it's mentioned later on in the film, but like Scrooge becomes like a second father to Tiny Tim, to try and do whatever he can to heal and at least make Tim's life comfortable and healthy and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, it definitely like all came flooding back to me, and I basically finished the movie and then I immediately just hit like restart and watched it again.
There you go.
Because I very much enjoy it. So let's talk about some favorite moments or least favorite moments. Frank, any favorite moments or least favorite moments that stood out for you on your first watch here?
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, my favorite part of the movie is the Tim scene. And like I had heard about this before I had ever watched the movie, and obviously it's a part of the book, but like I had heard it is very good and like powerful in this movie, and I didn't like cry because I don't know, that's always like a hard thing to get something to get me to do, but it's like I felt way more emotion out of these puppets than like I would have ever thought or anticipated. And I don't mean that in like a bad way. It's just like, but it's just like it is these like felt puppets, and they carry so much weight and emotion in the scene, and especially like Michael Caine's reactions and everything, even too, where I was just like I felt like they did that like incredibly well. Like I was surprised as somebody just kind of coming in.
Yeah, and I think that's where, to one of your points, Cam, I think the way like Scrooge, laments like, I don't want this child to die, and then Christmas Present throws back his line of like, but he best decrease the surplus population.
Surplus
Like
population.
it's a great like really dark stab at Scrooge there. And I think, I think because maybe we didn't get as much of that with Ghost of Christmas Past, like it just has that much more weight when this big,
Mm.
jolly, larger than life character, throws it right back at him and says it. Like it has more of a sting to it, I think, at least for me. Any favorite moments for you, Cam?
Yeah, I think my favorite moments have to do with Michael Caine just being around Muppets. When he's in his office and the rats and Kermit, when he's dealing with Beaker and what's his face,
Bunsen.
Mm.
Bunsen. Yeah, thank you. I'm trying to think. I'm like, it's something burner, and I don't remember what that burner is called, but it's Bunsen burner.
Yep.
But the idea that like just not the idea. Sorry, the seeing him play with the Muppets in a very much I'm not playing with you way adds to the contrast of their Muppetness that is just positively wonderful. And his turn at the end to like like everything about that. I was a bit like I forgot that he goes to Cratchit's house for dinner
Mm-hmm.
versus normally in the regular tale he goes to Fred's
Yeah.
and accepts the invitation for dinner, and like that's a big deal. Because that's actually the first time he meets Fred's wife. Uh, but what I loved is at the very end in the Cratchit household, everybody was there,
Mm-hmm.
hmm
and it's
That's a
this
fire
wonderful
hazard.
and yeah, 100%. It's
And
this
I thought that
wonderful
because like
ensemble. Yeah, it's just a wonderful ensemble cast moment with everybody there, and it's a perfect send off. The reprise of the song is beautiful. Um, it's such a phenomenal just moment. So I think those are my favorite moments for sure.
Yeah.
And my
They're
least favorite moments are the lack of what it didn't have. There you
yeah.
go.
The one of the little gags I love that gets me every time is when uh, Gonzo and Rizzo they climb over the fence and it's a whole to do and Rizzo's like terrified of jumping down and Gonzo's like I'll catch you and then he doesn't catch him and then Rizzo walks back because he forgot his jelly beans and he just walks back through the the gate and Gonzo's just like you could fit through the bars and Rizzo's just like yeah so what and then they just continue on with the like that's just like pitch perfect Muppets physical comedy. I love that.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so there's one more favorite scene I have to say.
Yeah.
It's when first off, the ghost of Christmas past being like a like discombobulated like head or just a head and two hands, two tiny hands.
Mm-hmm.
that was so wild. I
It
was like,
was
why did they
yeah.
That
do that? I
It
was like,
definitely
why?
that
Like,
was very
that was probably the most traumatizing part of this movie for me
yeah,
growing up was like what is wrong with that child thing?
it's like because it's a
what's
doll
great
face
is
that's like a
she
ghost.
says,
Like,
yeah. But the best part, one of my favorite parts, is when she goes, "It's okay, take my hand and we shall fly." And this Michael Caine, his big old man hand, goes over and a little tiny doll hand like grabs it
Mm-hmm.
and then flies him out. And then the fight, the coup de grace, the best ending part of that is Gonzo goes, "Here we go," and he grappling hooks onto Scrooge,
Yeah.
yeah,
and they go
yeah,
with him, and that's phenomenal.
yeah,
That
that's a
that
good
scene's
one.
one of
Yeah.
my favorite ones. But you're talk because it happens right after the gate scene.
Yeah. I'll pull this in here as a little bit of trivia that I hadn't pulled in, but I went and looked it back up. Kind of talking to the idea of Michael Caine kind of just getting to be around Muppets.
Mhm.
There was a trivia basically it said Michael Caine actively pursued the role of Scrooge when he heard it was going into production. He had missed out on a guest star role on the TV series The Muppet Show, which was shot in the UK while he was living as a tax exile in the US at the time. Michael Caine had a crazy life in the 70s. But however,
What a baller.
friends and colleagues he knew who had guested on it, such as Roger Moore, John Cleese, Peter Sellers, and Sylvester Stallone, had told him they had a massive amount of fun appearing on the show and that it had also given them extra kudos with the children, too. So by the time this film was greenlit in 1991, Caine had moved back to the UK, and when he heard it was going to be filmed in a London film studio, he had his agent badger Jim Henson Productions until they agreed to meet with him. They then cast him shortly afterwards. So I love that, like, Michael Caine wanted to be with the Muppets. Like, yes, he wanted to treat this
Yeah,
very seriously and be very
but he
straight-laced,
wanted, but he
but he wanted to be around that Muppet energy. which was
Everyone
that's
wants to be around the Muppets.
exactly. I would love to. I would love to be in a Muppet movie. That'd be great.
Are you kidding me? I would love it. I'd love to be on the Muppets set. Like the Muppets are, like I said, they are just like they are under the surface of of the cultural what's going on in the world, and they can pop up at any time and be relevant.
Hmm.
I would love to work with the Muppets. It'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Has Michael Caine
Yeah,
done anything with them since then? Like, has he shown up in anything else, or was this like a hit?
I don't think
it is
so.
rare that somebody works with the Muppets more than once. For like, there's
Mm,
something about working with the Muppets. You work with the Muppets once, and then you never work with them again. Like that is like you look at all the past Muppet movies. You look at like the people who had been on the television show, but not in any of the films.
mm.
Like you're looking at a very wide cast of people who make an appearance in a Muppet product and then don't show up ever again. It's like I don't think he's been in anything since then, but like it is like the Muppet for whatever reason, it's like one of those weird things in like just in entertainment where they don't like the stars align, you get to work with the Muppets and then you move on.
Yeah, I think it's. I think
And
it's
that's all there
kind
is
of
to it.
a. The idea I think is like, oh, we did our bit with that, celebrity or something like that. We don't need to retread that ground and bring them back for something else. It's not. It's not Saturday Night Live where it's like, yeah, let's bring so and so back as a host again or something. Um, but it's one of those things that like I'm constantly curious to see what the Muppets do in this Disney Plus era,
Mhm.
and where we'll see kind of the Muppets kind of pop back into pop culture again. So, but yeah, I just wanted to pull in that little trivia bit because I love that Michael Caine really wanted to be a part of that film. Any other favorite moments?
Okay.
I did like the end, the little joke at the end I thought was funny is when he's like, "Wow, that was a really great story, Mr. Dickens," and he was like, "Yeah, you should read the book if you like that one," or like whatever he says. I thought that
Yeah,
was like a cute little like thing as it pans up into the sky.
yeah. If you
Like
like
that
that,
one got me. I
yeah,
thought
if you
that
like
was
that,
funny.
you should try reading the novel. Yeah. I also, and we touched on it a little bit, but like just all of the songs, like I love
Mhm.
the Muppet magic of so many of the songs in this film, so much so that like I wanted you guys to make sure you experience the other one that got cut from the movie. But yeah, just like the energy they all bring, and the way they kind of help, like even like from the get go of like there goes Mr. Humbug, da, 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 da,
Bug,
da.
there goes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's perfect.
like so much great stuff. Marley and Marley is again, it's a fun one because like even that, like I love. There's a little bit of not breaking the fourth wall, but like Marley and Marley basically say like, how did you come up with that, a pun that bad? Like leave the comedy to the bears, being a reference to the fact that a Fozziwig is playing the Fezziwig role, who is like probably the most joyous character in Scrooge's past. So he's going to be the one that tells the jokes, but also Statler and Waldorf, like their whole thing was heckling Fozzie on the Muppet Show,
Hmm.
and so making fun of the bear being the one that tells the comedy stuff. Just like great little nods to the history of the Muppets there. But yeah,
That
I so many of the music songs in this I just love. I just kind of want to like bottle that magic. Frank, you were gonna say something?
Well, piggybacking off of that, that was actually my other favorite scene I meant to give a shout out to too, is the like the Fozzie scene.
Mm-hmm.
Because
It's
yeah,
great.
like I did like that. Like I even not having really watched like the Muppet Show, I still picked up on some of the references that are like in that like room because I like that like the people playing the music is like the house band or like the
Yep.
Muppets like band.
Yep.
And like
Doctor
Animal on the
Teeth.
drums, and I love that he doesn't get to go crazy. He has to like
He's
go
playing the
easy at first and
triangle.
like yeah, like even that I thought was like, oh, that's cute and fun, and like I like Fozzie Bear too, so it was cool to see him. And yeah, like Statler and Waldorf are the other Muppets that I also like liked or have just like enjoyed as they like heckle him. So like that whole scene was when everything was working like super well for me, where I was like, oh, this is really fun, and like it's a really interesting take like on the classic version of that. So like that was one of my other favorite parts.
Yeah. Um, well, cool. If nobody has any other moments to celebrate, we will dive on into the report card. Let's grade this thing from A plus to F. I will kick it off, which I almost never do. But I just but before Cameron craps on it and and Frank has like in a weird juxtaposition, like I feel like I'm the one that tends to be the like the you know more tempered grade of us. I give this an A plus. And again,
Mhm.
I totally admit that that is very nostalgia driven, and there were definitely moments there like when I didn't catch it my first time around, but like on the second like rewatch that I was doing, the sequence of Michael Caine flying with the Ghost of Christmas Past, I was like, this doesn't look great, but I don't care because I still love the
That's fine.
joy of the Muppets. So A plus from me. Cam, where do you give it?
I give it a solid A. Like it's, I said it might be one of my least favorite Christmas Carol films, but actually, scratch it. I give it an A plus. It definitely, it might be one of my least favorite Christmas Carol films, but it is a phenomenal film in its own right. It is a Muppets film. It accomplishes what it's setting out to do. As somebody who has a deep love of A Christmas Carol as a property, like I don't feel like it. Like if I was grading it as a Christmas Carol, that'd be one thing. But this is the D plus show, not a Christmas Carol show. This is a show about we're giving a grade to a film, and it's an A plus. It's a solid, wonderful movie, and you should watch it.
Great.
There you go.
How about you, Frank?
Thought you thought I was gonna crap all over it. I already did that earlier in
I
the
mean, a
film
little
or
bit,
in the
yeah.
podcast. But even then, I
I
just
was
admitted like it just omitted things.
Yeah.
They didn't do anything wrong.
Well, admittedly, I was a little bit lower in my score, but I'm gonna Cam kind of even talked it up a little bit there for me too, because I think he is right. Where even though I was like, nothing made me go like, wow, I absolutely love this movie, but it's a really well made movie. Especially like what I always say before when we rank these is like especially for something you're gonna watch with your kids, like it's a good movie. You can have fun with your kids, and especially for their first outing without Jim Henson, really great swing at the bat. Let alone this was his
Yeah.
first movie ever
Yeah.
for Brian Henson. Like incredible, honestly, because it's a really well made movie. So I'll go with an A. Like I was originally like a B or a B plus, but I think I give it an A because I think Cam made some good points there, and I think a lot of that is just true about the movie. So like I think he should get a lot of credit based on that.
Great. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. In addition to, again, the Muppet History Twitter account, I highly recommend as a great follow with just like little wonderful nuggets of Muppet lore and whatnot. The Disney Plus suggestions that you have are The Muppets, which is the Jason Segel kind of reboot of the series, as well as its sequel, Muppets Most Wanted, the original, The Muppet Movie, The Great Muppet Caper, Muppet Treasure Island, Muppets Now, which I believe is like the web series of things that they've done. The Muppets, the TV show, which is the kind of NBC Muppets Meet the Office meets behind the scenes of a late night show kind of thing that we touched on earlier, and then Muppet Babies, but it's not the Muppet Babies I grew up with. It's like a new version of Muppet Babies
Oh,
that seems to like I think it's more like CG Muppet Babies or something
It is. It's
from recent
horrifying.
years. I've not
It is
I've
you don't
not
like
seen
it.
anything
horrifying.
of that one, but yeah, I was like, but what about
My niece watches
like
it.
the
It's horrifying.
yeah, the Muppet Babies from my
Yeah.
childhood, which is like I realized that like the Muppet Babies from my childhood was probably where I first got exposed to stuff like Star Wars because they did like a ton of like little,
Mhm.
homages to Star Wars in Muppet Babies and stuff like that. So
A
um
lot more of like there's tons of Indiana Jones stuff
yeah,
in
exactly.
Muppet Babies.
Yep.
I will say like the new one creepy. My niece was like, I'm watching Muppet Babies, and I was like, are you kidding me? Let's watch Muppet Babies. And then I sat down and they turned it on, and I'm like, this is not Muppet Babies. I don't know what this is. I'm horrified. The CG is very like ugh.
It's
Like
like
the
it's
beautiful
it
artwork of the Muppet Babies show in my mind. Granted,
mm,
I'm watching it
yeah,
I'm thinking about it with rose tinted glasses, but
yeah.
like the artwork was beautiful in the Muppet Babies.
It's like a reverse
Like,
Dude,
DuckTales.
yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, that's so that's gonna do it there. Extracurriculars. Anybody watching anything else on Disney Plus? Cam, you
Yeah,
you caught up with Mandalorian, right? You finished Mandalorian.
Yeah, I just finished Mandalorian. Um, like what a second season of a show to come out of the gate,
Uh,
just like beat for beat, episode being better than the first.
Mhm.
And the first one was already phenomenal. If you love westerns, if you love Star Wars, if you just think space cowboys and space bounty hunters are cool, watch this show. It's excellent.
mhm.
Yeah. And like
Obviously,
admittedly,
obviously, I have a love of a character in that show,
there you go. Yes. Yeah.
Baby Yoda.
Um yeah, I love again, not like without spoilers and stuff, but I love that like pretty much every episode of The Mandalorian season 2 feels like it could be a backdoor pilot for another TV
Mm.
show, which as we found out from Disney
Some
Invest
of them
Day
are.
pretty much is the case. And we're gonna get at least 3 new series that are kind of spinning off from the Mandalorian characters and storyline.
Mm.
And I'm very excited for all of them. Because yeah, I think there's a I think I think this is a great way to continue telling Star Wars stories.
Mm.
Is to do this without feeling like you have to like everything has to be a movie trilogy or something like that. So yeah,
It,
lots of great stuff there in Mandalorian season 2. Yeah, Frank.
I'm excited to finally jump in because I've been hearing nothing but great things, and I've just been lazy and haven't started it. But especially after no spoilers, but I keep getting it spoiled for me, so I know
Yeah,
what happens, and that's
yeah,
why like it keeps getting better and more incredible, and that's why I want to dive in. But to your point there, I really appreciate that they're able to kind of bite off some of these smaller chunks of the Star Wars universe, and not everything has to be the whole universe is going to explode.
yeah,
Like I
Yeah,
like that it can be a little bit smaller, and we can tell some of those stories because that's where I think the cool stuff is. But that's just me.
yeah. I
So
mean,
I'm excited. I
I
think I'm
agree.
going to start it this week.
yeah. I mean, the Mandalorian is very much like those kind of like spin-off stories that were part of the canon when I was growing up, and now they're a lot of
Mhm.
legend stuff. But it is like the tales of Mos Eisley Cantina or Tales from Jabba's Palace.
Mhm.
It's those kinds of like let's take some side characters and just tell a cool story with them.
Mhm.
And yeah, to kind of what you said earlier, Cam. Like season 2 is great. I think season 1 hopefully is made better in hindsight now that we know of like the pieces that it was setting
Yeah,
up to get to season 2, because you couldn't have just done everything that we do in season 2. It wouldn't have
so you need it all
like
set up.
yeah, it would have just been like everybody would have been like, okay, this is too fan servicey. Like the fact that there
Yeah.
was 8 episodes to kind of lead us into all that stuff, I think
Mhm.
is what helps with the magic of season 2. But yeah, I look forward to
Yeah,
more and more from the Star Wars D plus universe of things.
And I'm
Uh,
excited for the Marvel side too. Just
yep,
while we're talking about future stuff,
yeah.
like some of
true.
those
Well,
Marvel shows look like they're incredible.
Yeah, we get
I will
WandaVision
say, like,
in a
yeah,
month, in a few
WandaVision
weeks. I
in a
Nice.
few
I'm looking
weeks, and
forward
I
to
then we
that.
get
I keep hoping, and I don't. They're not going to do it because like they already are launching Soul on Christmas. But like I kind of was hoping that like the January 15th WandaVision was going to be like a red herring, and it was going to be like, hey, just kidding, Merry Christmas. Here's WandaVision on D plus on
no. They need to put
December
Soul
21st.
out. That like
Yeah,
Soul got screwed by COVID.
it did. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I very much look forward to spending Friday watching Soul and Wonder Woman on
Yeah.
Disney Plus
Uh,
and HBO Max. So
I was gonna say on an odd Disney Plus front, I will be watching Wonder Woman this
yeah,
weekend on HBO Max
yeah.
the day it comes out. So I'm very excited. Good job, HBO.
Yeah, maybe we can talk about that on next week's that nerdy site show. We'll do kind of our
Mhm.
Wonder Woman impressions, because yeah,
There you go.
it's weird that like COVID through every like superheroes have been such a staple of the last 12 years of our
Mhm.
lives since going back to like Iron Man and I mean before that even with like the Batman trilogy, the Nolan trilogy starting in 2005, was it 2006 with Batman Begins.
I think it was 5. Yeah.
But yeah, like the idea that like we didn't get a new superhero movie this year because COVID threw Black Widow out there, and then yeah, Wonder Woman has been kicked down the line until Christmas now. It's weird. So yeah, I look forward
Yeah.
to hopping into that, and continuing on into the whatever the future version of the DC universe looks like, in Wonder Woman going back to 1985. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, I look forward to doing that. It's got Pedro Pascal, who is of course there in The Mandalorian as well.
Din Djarin.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Looking forward to seeing him in.
Oh, he finalized. So like season 2 of The Mandalorian ends the tale of Din Djarin. So
I mean, spoilers, but I can't imagine. Like, I feel like that's not the case. I feel like they're going to come back for more Mandalorian.
You don't?
Huh?
Well, no, the Mandalorian's continuing as the Book of Boba Fett, isn't it?
No, the Book of Boba Fett is going to be a separate thing. And again,
Oh, I thought
Yeah,
that was
maybe
gonna be
that's like a
season 3.
spin-off show.
yeah, no,
If you've been paying attention to anything, there you go.
yeah, no. I believe John Favreau came out like this week and basically was like, "Yeah, no, Book of Boba Fett is going to be a spin-off thing." And it was like the great thing. Obviously, we're now in this, but like, they had the Disney Investor Day a week before the finale of The Mandalorian, and so the fact that they let that like one more surprise come out naturally in the season finale of The Mandalorian was really cool. But yeah, I think they've said that Book of Boba Fett's going to be holiday, like December next year, and then The Mandalorian is going to return in like early 22, I believe, 2022
Okay.
is when they'll. Because
I will
2022,
say,
really? Damn.
John Favreau has that
Yeah.
kind of power because
Yeah.
he delayed Baby Yoda merch, and then
Yeah.
he also chastised Bob Eisner for calling baby like the child, which is his like the name that the crew and cast call him, and is in like on all the merchandise. When Bob Eisner called it Baby Yoda, John Favreau hit him up and chastised him for calling it Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, I mean, like in 2021,
man has too much power.
So in addition to, or like, I think one of the reasons that The Mandalorian is going to take a little bit more time before it comes back is you also have the Obi-Wan series that's supposed to be coming out next year. You also have the Cassian Andor series.
That one looks cool.
The kind of Rogue One prequel series that I believe is supposed to come out next year. So like, there's already plenty on the Star Wars plate that is supposed to hit in 2021. So yeah, it makes sense that they're going to do seasons when they fit into place. And then also, eventually we're going to get the Ahsoka series and the Rangers of the New Republic, I think.
Yep. Yeah. Ooh, how great would it have been if they had put out Solo like this?
Yeah, Solo would have been way better as one of these shows.
I think we'll still see Alden Ehrenreich kind of return as Han Solo in one of these, whatever that is. Like, I
liked him. So.
I thought back when Solo came out, the rumor was that Obi-Wan was going to be a movie, and what Solo kind of sets up with like the return of Darth Maul, I thought was going to be interesting because I was like, oh, they're going to have him and maybe Emilia Clarke's character continue on into the Obi-Wan movie next, and so I think now we'll maybe see those characters show up in the Obi-Wan series now that it's
That'd be cool.
a limited run series instead. Yeah,
I'm
looking forward to just so much from Disney Plus moving forward. Yeah, not it because on the other side you still have the Marvel side of things with WandaVision, with the Winter Soldier and the Falcon, with or Falcon and Winter Soldier, with Hawkeye. I'm really looking forward to the What If series, the animated series.
Yeah.
Because I think that's going to be cool, especially because they're going to be bringing back a lot of the like original actors just in animated form. So lots of stuff to be excited for in 2021 from Disney Plus.
I'm also very excited for that Armor Wars show.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, hey, I know it's about Don Cheadle and War Machine and not Tony, but that was the best Iron Man story they ever wrote, so I'm very excited to see that play out as like a show.
Cool, yeah.
That'll be cool.
Yeah. There's lots of good stuff coming. So
yeah,
we will keep we'll keep that in mind for future episodes of this show. But that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, Cameron and Frank, for joining me this week. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to give a shout out to, Frank?
Not particularly. I guess I do want to give a shout out or just kind of future cast for people who might listen in the future. That next year we may do an episode about dinosaurs. Because I think it was January 21st. It comes to Disney Plus, the entire series. So get ready. I hope people are excited.
Yep, that's definitely one
Subscribe.
that we'll be doing. I have no doubt. You follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Cam, anything you want to give a shout out to?
Yes, I wrote an article about about the Soulsborne genre as well as accessibility, and you should go read it. It's very good. There will be an audio version coming out as soon as I, hopefully within the next week or two, get my original PC set up back and up and running, so I can actually do some proper recording. That being said, also you should check out some other awesome stuff that we're doing. Keep an eye out for our irregular podcast coming back soon, and hopefully you take care.
Yep, cool. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey, and I will echo Cam's shout out there of his written piece about the Soulsborne saga or series of games, as well as just all of our podcasts that we've done this year. Especially, I've been very proud of the fact that since kind of year 2 started November 1st, we've gotten back in. There has been daily, at least for the weekdays, daily stuff going up on our channels with our kind of our 3 flagship shows right now, our podcasts, as well as the Let's Plays we've been doing over on YouTube, and then our one-off irregularly scheduled stuff like that conversational podcast. Check out all that fun stuff, and I look forward to kind of kicking off 2021 with all of our game of the year stuff, as well as just a new slate of content here in the coming year. If you liked what you heard, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, all that fun stuff. You can always follow us over at That Nerdy Site on Twitter, or go to thatnerdysite.com. And if you're feeling so inclined, you can always help support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.